LegacyMaker, the All Sports Network, presents a SIRTOBA Media production where the struggle is real to be awesome.
5, 4, 3, 2.
The wait is over.
So you're giving it to Dale Earnhardt Jr. because he piggybacked off of his dad's name. The only difference was because there was a junior at the end and not a senior.
Yes, and
Okay.
because the fact is, Drew.
Point with, oh my God! I had Miami Heat winning last night. I was upset too when they lost. This with you because of the fact of what you.
Get your popcorn ready. It's time for the In or Out sports debate with your hosts and Drew Willingham.
Welcome, one and all, to episode 19 of the In or Out Sports Debate. I am your host, Drew Willingham, along with this week's special guest. He is from the LegacyMaker Sports Network, Mr. James Brown.
What's going on, Drew? Glad to finally be on the show. Looking forward to having a great show. I think we got some great topics today, man. Glad to be here.
We are definitely going to crush it, and I do apologize for the intro part. I noticed that my mic was muted. I don't know if it got me introducing you or not. Did you hear me when it went through?
I don't think it went through on this time, but you know.
Oh man,
to those of us that are regulars on the network, I mean, they know who I am. They know what we're about. If not, you're about to find out today.
My man, I love that passionate attitude. I still had that picture up there. I still had the graphic. We still, I got to give it up to James real quick. James came off the bench today. I was already planning on getting James in here towards the end of the month, but he slid in on the 5th of July, day after 4th of July, with everything that was going on. Our current LMSN alumni, Paul Schofield, was supposed to be here with episode 19, but unfortunately had a family emergency, could not be here. So James Brown came in off the bench, and yours truly had an episode earlier with Mr. Brian H. Waters that we'll get to here in a second that I had to go through and fumble around and get some graphics done with my man here. So right here, just to sum it up, I am so appreciative of you. This background that we have with you just chilling with us down here in the bottom underneath of our spaces is cool too. So to be able to throw all that together in such a short time, I'm appreciative of that. Before we get into round one, though, I do want to acknowledge the Vault of Fame.
Acknowledge me.
And with the Vault of Fame, we look back on previous participants within the In or Out Sports Debate. Episodes 1 through 11, we had Rob Johnson of the LegacyMaker Sports Network, followed by participants through 12 and 15. We had Tyrone Montgomery Jr. for those two episodes of the LegacyMaker Sports Network. Corey Mann from the Undisputed Champions podcast was here for episode 13. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony from Professional Wrestling Squared Circle for episode 14. Brian Snow, the Snowman in the Morning podcast host for episode 16. Darrell Owens, Mr. Rollback and LMSN co-creator for episode 17. And Mr. Brian H. Waters with episode 17 was just previously here. Announced for next Monday on 7-11 day at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we have Wale Akinso of the Urban Sports Scene here for episode 20 next Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Followed by previously announced earlier this evening on episode 18, we have the son of the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony, Xander Anthony, Kid NBA historian, will be here next Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern time, 3 p.m. Central time, for an All-NBA edition 2.0 live for episode 21 here on the LegacyMaker Sports Network. Tell you what, James, we've got a lot to cover with just your coming in off the bench. Just like we said, we've got those 5 rounds. We've also got things coming ahead. I'm really stoked. But with that, let's take this into round one.
Round one.
With round one, we have Matt Ryan's expectations in Indianapolis will be too much pressure for him to advance far in the 2022 NFL playoffs. How do you feel about this, James, with you being an Atlanta Falcons fan and with you having Matt Ryan for all those years, your first year without Matt Ryan, him going to Indy, him replacing Carson Wentz? Are you in or are you out on him coming in and being a savior, or are you going to be in or out on him not advancing far in the playoffs like previously stated below?
I am in on Matt Ryan coming through for the Colts.
Okay, so so it says Matt Ryan's expectations in Indianapolis will be too much pressure for him to advance. So then you'll be out on this. Actually, my bad. I'll take the fall for that, but go ahead and give us your reason.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. In on, him saving the day, out on him feeling the pressure. I mean, you got to look at it, man. Matt Ryan's a quarterback who's been in the league now for well over, 15 seasons. He's got the experience. He knows the offense. I mean, he's a former league MVP. I mean, I'm not just saying this as a Falcons fan. But this is a guy who can come in, run your offense, hold everybody accountable. And I would say, honestly, the roster that he has around him is the best he's had probably since the Super Bowl run he's had in Atlanta. He's got a solid offensive line. You got a beast in Jonathan Taylor in the backfield in that run game. The only thing better he might have had in Atlanta might be wide receivers on the outside. But even still, Michael Pittman, I think they brought back T.Y. Hilton. They got some guys there on the outside that he can get the ball to. So, Matt Ryan is really in good shape here in Indianapolis, not to mention that the defense that he's going to have on his side as well. That defense is probably 10 times better than what's currently now in Atlanta or what he left behind last season. So I don't see how Matt could succumb to the pressure. He's been set up for success. For a guy that did all that for the franchise, it's the least we could do for him on the way out.
I really like your argument. It's a very compelling argument, but I have to disagree. I am actually in on that. And the reason why I'm in on this is Matt Ryan's numbers dipped last year. He had 600 less passing yards than he did with the season with an extra game in the year. So he had one extra game to get more yards, and he had 600 less passing yards. And he also had about 20? It was 26 touchdowns he had in 2020. He had 21. No, he had 20 in this year. My bad. I just had to look that up. So he had 21 this year. He was 20 and 12 this year. It's 20 to 12 as far as interception to touchdown ratio. And he was 26 to 11 the year before that. So when you look at all that and you have that into the equation, his numbers are dipping, and he didn't have Julio because he was without Julio last year. So, of course, when you don't have your big wide receiver, your numbers are going to go down, but he really didn't have them that much the year before that anyway. So I look at all this stuff, and even though he's got more weapons and a better coaching system in Indianapolis, I feel like he's going to have more pressure. Carson Wentz had more pressure and he couldn't get there. You got an owner that likes to run his mouth, even though I like Jim Irsay. I don't have a problem with Jim Irsay whatsoever as an owner whatsoever. I think he's pretty entertaining, and I like him as an owner. He did well for Peyton Manning, and Peyton Manning speaks highly of him. So I feel like he'll do good things for Matt Ryan. I feel like he'll fit the mold better than what Carson Wentz did. But at the same time, I'm just not sold on them advancing too far in the playoffs this year. Maybe the year after, but I feel like they're going to make it, but they're going to get bumped in the first round.
I don't know, man. I honestly feel like, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I feel like he's going into a division where, there's not a lot as far as competing around him. We have to see what Trevor Lawrence can do this year with the Jags. He's got a real coach now with Urban Meyer out the door, Doug Peterson coming in. He's finally got a coach that can actually teach him what it means to be a pro at this level. We saw the Tennessee Titans. They lost a lot of pieces on that offensive side. A.J. Brown got shipped out to Philly. We saw that they didn't re-sign Julio Jones, who was hampered with injuries. Houston's Houston. But at the same time, looking at it from Atlanta's perspective, Matt didn't have his pieces like he said. Yes, Julio Jones walked. But in addition to that, you got to think Calvin Ridley missed a lot of time last season. Matt Ryan was out there throwing to Russell Gage, who went into the year as wide receiver number 3, and Olamide Zaccheaus, who went into the year as wide receiver number 4, possibly. So you got to think he put up those numbers with guys who, prior to last year, not many people outside of Atlanta knew who those guys were, and he still put up those numbers and the touchdowns. So imagine what he could do with the crop and the talent that is available with him in Indianapolis. We could possibly see a bounce back year.
So would you chalk it up as Matt Ryan's production and his numbers went down because of coaching last year and not because?
Personnel.
Okay.
I would say personnel.
That's more of a professional term to put it. I can respect that. With that being said, I do want to keep this within the Atlanta Falcons for James for this next round. Let's see what we got for this next round.
Round 2.
A debatable topic for this, with you being an all-time Atlanta Falcons fan. Do you think Deion Sanders is the greatest Atlanta Falcon of all time? What is your thought on that? Are you in or are you out on this, James?
Man, this one hurts too, but unfortunately, I'm out.
Okay.
I am out. And it hurts. Like I said, it hurts to say it because, Deion Sanders, Deion, prime time, he started his career in Atlanta, took us from Fulton County Stadium to the Georgia Dome. A lot of people refer to it as the house that Deion built. But, the long-term success of his career, when you think of Deion Sanders, you think about those great years in Dallas, the years out in San Francisco. I mean, his success started in Atlanta, but when he became Deion that we know, Deion that's a Hall of Famer, I would say a large part of that is due to the success that he enjoyed after leaving the Falcons. So that's why I would say I'm out. And I would honestly say that if we're talking about greatest franchise player, it's the guy we referenced in round one. It's Matt Ryan. I mean, he came in at a point in time where this franchise was in a state of flux. I mean, Michael Vick was off. He had to sit down, do his bid in jail. I mean, we were struggling with the lights of Joey Harrington and Byron Leftwich at quarterback. I remember middle school after a long Sunday, just getting brutalized in school on Monday because it's like, my God, you're a Falcons fan, and look at what you guys trotted out on the field yesterday, and it was awful. Then all of a sudden, 2008 draft comes along, and they say, hey, there's a kid coming out of Boston College, and it's looking like the Falcons are going to take him at number 3 overall. And I was just like, all right, if this is the direction that we choose to go, we got to hit on this pick. And sure enough, I mean, Matt Ryan was a hit. I mean, he took us further than any other franchise quarterback has in the entire franchise. I mean, pretty much every passing record in Falcons history, he owns it. I mean, this is the guy who came in and literally took a franchise that was struggling, and he took us to the highest of heights we've been. And I would say even more than that, the city of Atlanta, I mean, it is not easy to follow up the cultural icon that was Michael Vick. To this day, the city of Atlanta still recognizes Michael Vick as like a top guy in that town. I'm pretty sure now, if you go to the Georgia Dome or Mercedes-Benz Stadium now, you'll probably see the crowd and you'll see sevens out there, and it's not for Younghoe Koo, it's for Michael Vick. So to come in behind that and have the type of career he's had, the success he's enjoyed while in Atlanta, I mean, I'd have to give it to him hands down. He's the best player in franchise history.
I was going to say the same thing. So we definitely both agree on who it is. That's why I've got to disagree with this statement. I'm out on this as well. I mean, James summed it up with everything that happened with Michael Vick, with all that debacle that happened with the dogfighting scandal. It brought that entire franchise down, and we saw that following year, which was why they were able to even draft Matt Ryan to begin with. Bobby Petrino, all that crazy mess. That was a rough year. Just that name right there, like that. Just that year right there. That was such a joke. Which, I mean, I felt for you and anybody who was an Atlanta Falcons fan. I felt for all Atlanta Falcons fans when that was happening, because everyone liked Michael Vick at that point. Like before the dogfight, like everybody had a mutual love for Michael Vick. It seemed like everywhere you looked, even if they weren't an Atlanta Falcons fan, you saw Atlanta Falcons jerseys. So people were supporting Vick, especially here in Virginia, because he was from Newport News area and because Virginia Tech. So living in Virginia and being from here, we saw all the Michael Vick jerseys. So he's up there in the top 5, I would say. But Matt Ryan is definitely number 1 greatest Falcon of all time. He took them to the Super Bowl, took them to the promised land. Deion didn't do that. He almost won, but then we saw that demonstrate like the worst deficit of Super Bowl history, because you had them, and that could be another debatable topic for another episode one day. But we already know how that ended. But the fact that he got them there, Deion didn't even get him to the Super Bowl. And all the stats that Matt Ryan put on the franchise lead numbers through those years, you got to give it to Matt Ryan. So that's why I can't give it to Deion. Other people may disagree. There's going to be some homers that may love Deion for that short time. At that point, you might as well say Brett Favre's the greatest Atlanta Falcon of all time for that 1 year that he played there. If you're going to be that so far off. But hell, that's not where we're going with that today. But that's not breaking news. But speaking of, we got some breaking news, James. That breaking news is, even though we just announced an episode earlier today on the Brian H. Waters episode, and we announced one yesterday, we have a third episode that'll be coming out next week, again for another Double Debate Tuesday. The other half of the Undisputed Champions, P. Alexander Wally of the Undisputed Champions show, will be here next Tuesday, the 12th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be joined by P. Alexander Wally, who is one half of the Undisputed Champions with Corey Mann, who was here for episode 13. So definitely looking forward to having the other half of that show here for the first time as well. Now, with that breaking news, we do have another round to go to. We're going to slide on into round 3 with this one that we definitely are pretty familiar with.
Round 3.
And I say this because when it comes to numbers, when we look at baseball or football or basketball and we think of the greatest athletes of all time, if you were to divide them up into the numbers that they actually play with, and this is why I call this one by the numbers, Tony Gwynn is the best to ever wear the number 19 of all sports athletes ever. How do you feel about that, James? When you think of all the athletes who have ever worn past, present, we can't go future because we don't have a time machine. But if you think of past and present, Tony Gwynn, is he the best one to ever wear the number 19? Are you in or out? I lost your audio. I can't hear you. You're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. But
no, you're good.
I'd have to say that again. I think I'm out on this one.
Okay.
So yes, Tony Gwynn, when you look at his career, he's got the numbers. He's got he's got the 338 batting average. He's got over 3,000 hits. He's a left-handed, so I feel like I'm betraying a fellow lefty on this take. But when I think of number 19 throughout the history of sports, there is one guy that comes to mind. And for a lot of newer generation, they may not know, but for those that do, that have followed the game of football since the beginning of time, they know when you think number 19, you think of Johnny Unitas for the Baltimore Colts back in the day. I mean, this was a guy who he was, in a sense, the Peyton Manning of his day, or you could say Peyton Manning was the Johnny Unitas of his day. This was a guy who, at the line of scrimmage, was the best quarterback for his time. I mean, Johnny Unitas, he pretty much the forward pass, that was his bread and butter at a time where football was 3 yards in a cloud of dust from running the ball all the time. I mean, if you go back and look at some of his numbers, he was posting 3,000-yard seasons back in the 50s and 60s. Like, if memory serves me correct, I think his single highest ever passing yards for a season was 3,481 yards. That came in 1963. And that's comparable to some quarterbacks that play in the NFL today. And he threw that for a season back in 1963 on only about 50% passing completion. If you tie that into nowadays where guys are hitting 60, 70% of their passes, you're talking about he could have had nearly about another 1,000 yards, about a 4,400-yard season. So, I mean, when I think of number 19, man, I'd have to go with Johnny Unitas. He's got the stats, he's got the nostalgia, and he's also got the wins. He's got NFL championships before the Super Bowl, and then he also won a Super Bowl himself. So, I mean, I got to go with Johnny Unitas, greatest number 19 there was.
You hit it right on the head, and I agree with you on this. I'm out on this as well. And I tell you what, it was tough. Even though it's not, it seems like on paper it's not. It kind of was, because when you say Tony Gwynn, the best ever to wear the number 19, and then you go do your homework, and you see Johnny U, like Tony Gwynn was almost as big to the sport of baseball as Johnny U was to football. When you really look into it, the difference is that Johnny U's got a championship, or has championships before Super Bowl as well, but has won the big ones in NFL where Tony Gwynn couldn't, as a team, because Johnny U was at the quarterback position, was more able to lead it as a captain. And that's when you talk about like Peyton Manning and stuff like that. Peyton Manning molded his game after Johnny U. Even though he looked up to his father, he looked at other quarterbacks. And another one he even said throughout early on in his career was he looked at Johnny U. That's why he wanted to come to Indianapolis. That's why he wanted to be a Colt and to add on to that legacy for the Colts franchise. So that's why I have to agree with you on the fact that Johnny U is number 19. There's also another quarterback, famous quarterback, 4 Super Bowls award number 19 for a couple of years for the Chiefs, and that was Joe Montana. So that's why, even though he only wore it for 2 years, he's even above Tony Gwynn, because he had 4 Super Bowls, man, and was a legend for San Francisco. So that's why you got to have Joe Montana, or according to the guy on the water board, Joe Montana, have him at 1, and then Johnny Unitas, those 2 up there, to have him in there above Tony Gwynn. So even though I love Tony Gwynn and I love what he did for baseball, and having 3,000 hits, and me being a big guy, being a little bit fluffy myself, it's good to be able to see somebody of big size and big girth be able to play baseball, to be a role model to the younger generation as well, like the Prince Fielders and Cecil Fielders and stuff like that, like the father-son
CC
duo.
Sabathia.
CC Sabathia, you might not see these bigger guys in the game if it wasn't for someone like Tony Gwynn. And Tony Gwynn played outfield, and you have to be athletic to play outfield, and played his entire career in the NL. So I'm saying all this stuff was tough, but what separates him from the others is he didn't get a championship, and I can't give it to him for that. So we both are in good agreements with that, and we do actually have some decent amount of comments I want to go through for the medial mayhem, where we will discuss what we have up here from our fans. You know, right here, a little over the midway mark, we have some comments from our fans at the beginning of the show. And from our original participant who was supposed to be here, Paul, definitely reiterated what I was saying earlier on, that, he said, "My dude, so sorry I missed it tonight. Life happens," which we totally get it, man. That's why I'm not holding you down for this one. James came through in the clutch, came through off the bench. My man, came up a few weeks a little bit earlier than what I was planning on getting him in, but I appreciate it, man. You definitely saved the day. And Paul, I know you definitely appreciate it, seeing this out there. You definitely appreciate it as well, so we can keep the legacy of this show going for LegacyMaker Sports Network. LegacyMaker Sports Network comments, Drew and James, stoked for this one, as we have been too, having fun throughout these past 23 minutes here, throughout the first 3 rounds of the In or Out Sports Debate. Ryan could have his best season ever, according to D.O. How do you feel about that one?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, if you look at it right now, 2016 is MVP year, with the weapons he has around him and the time he'll probably have from the offensive line, he could definitely reach those numbers, if not surpass it. It's just, if he can stay healthy, if the pieces around him stay healthy, he could definitely put up some numbers this season in Indianapolis. It could happen. It could happen.
I'm looking forward to seeing that if it does happen, because, I mean, he's due. I felt bad for him, like we were talking about earlier with that Super Bowl debacle with what he had. I feel like he's due for one. If Matt Stafford can get one, Matt Ryan definitely deserves one, okay? So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. Give the other Matt his damn quarterback. Get that quarterback his Super Bowl, and let's get on with it. Dio says this, Ryan, the answer for me, but Vic is the one who changed the culture in Atlanta and in the NFL. So, yeah, you definitely can have him in the top 5, in my opinion, but he's not number 1. Matt Ryan, for the length of time and what he did to rebuild that franchise, like what James and I were talking about earlier, you can't give it to Vic because of what he did to almost cost that franchise. They almost turned into the damn Oakland Raiders at that point, as bad as they were during that one season. They got lucky when they got Ryan, and it took a little bit of time, but they turned it around, got to the Super Bowl. And you just getting to the Super Bowl, like the Bengals last year, is an accomplishment in itself. You should be proud of, whether you get there and you lose or you win it all and you got the one championship ring. But in my opinion, you got to give it to Matt Ryan because he got you to the promised land. Vic didn't. He couldn't get you there. Neither did Deion, which is why we couldn't go in with him either.
Yeah, I mean, Mike got us to the NFC Championship game. Like I said, I mean, cultural icon, still recognized in the city today. But, you know, I got to go with Ryan. But, you know, the love for Vic is still there, man. And
it is.
He's from the state of Virginia, 757, right down the road. I mean, hometown hero in a sense. But, you know, I wish he'd have got it done. It'd have been nice. But, you know, things happen. You know, I feel like he got a nice rebound in Philadelphia to go along with it, though. He definitely learned from his mistakes. And, you know, he's able to come back to the city now. He's been celebrated. Love to see it.
You know, I can't tell you how many hours I played Madden 2004. Like with that, how beast mode he was in that game and how you could just run it from one end to the other.
It was the playbook.
It was. And if you traded him to a team, like no matter what team it was, you were going to do the same thing with them. But if you took him off of the Falcons, they were trash. I would go with that. I'm sorry. But if you traded him away on
we had Crumpler, that was about it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Algie Crumpler.
I know you haven't heard that name in a while. Tight end of a long ways, man. We got two more comments to the midway point. Dio is excited about Tony Gwynn. You know, we had to have I'm glad we were able to have a topic on here about Tony Gwynn, whether we agreed or not. It's good to talk about Tony Gwynn. We don't hear enough of him anymore. And he's definitely big for the sport of baseball back when I was growing up, you know, growing up throughout the 90s and hearing about Tony Gwynn. I modeled my baseball after him as being a bigger kid. And this is tough because guys like Johnny Unitas, when he's talking about, you know, that topic. So it really is. When you got Johnny Unitas up there and what he's done for football, and you can put him too, I mean, it's just like doing a top 10 list. You're constantly erasing stuff before you finally come up with what that list is, and then you erase it again because you think of somebody else.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, Tony Gwynn was awesome, but it's like, I mean, when I close my eyes in Division 19, I mean, Johnny Unitas, that's the guy I see.
That is the number one guy. I mean, I even had, like I said, I had to throw Montana out there because even though he only wore it for 2 years, he still did more for football and still did a lot in that 2 years and got further in those 2 years than Tony Gwynn did. And so in the sport of baseball. So it's tough to say. I really like Tony Gwynn, but it's just the facts are the facts. And after the medial mayhem, we now have round 4 to go into.
Round 4.
You know, this one I was really looking forward to hearing what Paul had to say about this one, with him being an Eagles fan, just like I had the opportunity to talk about this with Ty, you know, back in early on in episodes. But Howie Roseman's offseason moves have reinvigorated the Philadelphia Eagles towards becoming a threat in the playoffs this season. What do you feel about that, James? Are you in or are you out on this?
I'm 1,000% in on this.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely. I mean, when you look at what Howie Roseman was able to do in an offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles in a year where they made the playoffs when nobody was really expecting that, in a year where they had a rookie head coach, and while Jalen Hurts wasn't a rookie, I mean, this was his first year as a full-time starter for the Philadelphia Eagles, and we had seen flashes before of brilliance, and he actually got to put it together for a season and actually make the playoffs. I mean, nobody saw that this year for this Eagles team. If you even went back and polled Eagles fans at the beginning of the year saying, hey, what would you like to see out of your team this year? They probably would have just told you, hey, competitive, competent football. And Hurts got them there. I mean, they went 9-7 or 9-8? Might even been 10-7 to make the playoffs as the last seed. And, you know, they were able to build upon that this past offseason. Hurts is now your guy. You know, Sirianni can come in. You know, they run the offense. And what do? When you find your guy at quarterback, you protect them and you build around them. You got Big Jordan Mailata out there at left tackle. Now you go out there, you get them another weapon. You already had Devontae Smith that you're bringing along. You go out and you add A.J. Brown, Pro Bowler from the Tennessee Titans, for what, a late first-round pick? I mean, that's a no-brainer. You bring in A.J. Brown, you pay him, make sure he's happy coming into camp. This is a guy who actually has rapport with Hurts from their days in college while they didn't actually play together. I mean, these were two guys where it was like, look, just out there slinging the ball around. Like, they have that rapport, they have that chemistry. It was even to a point where I believe Hurts was even recruiting Brown to probably come play with him in college at one point. So they've been talking about this. They've been dreaming about this. They finally get the opportunity now to link up together in Philadelphia, man. And I think they can work magic. I mean, we've seen Sirianni's system, whether it's RPO, whether it's the run game, deep pass. Hurts can make the throws. He's now got the weapons. It's just going out there and getting it done. And then when you flip it to the other side of the ball, drafting like the biggest man probably ever in Jordan Davis to pair with Fletcher Cox to plug the middle. I mean, how are you going to run against that? I mean, you already had a stout defensive line and that ate up the run game, and now you add on to that and another bigger body guy in Davis, a guy who can come in and learn from Fletcher Cox and be that D tackle of the future. I mean, you can't hate that. And then I know a lot of Eagles fans were saying, man, we really need a linebacker. We really need a guy that can run out there, run around, make some hits. And you find him in the third round in Nakobe Dean. I mean, this guy was the Buckets Award winner coming out of Georgia. And if you really look at it, he almost gets a chance to play that same role at Georgia that he's going to have in Philadelphia, where he's got those two big guys up front in the middle, eating up space, allowing him to find the lanes, make the hits, run and make plays. So I'm really excited to see what the Eagles can do this year in the NFC East. Spoiler alert, I would probably say they're my favorite right now in the NFC East. I mean, the additions they've made, the regressions that Dallas has had, they're my favorite in the East right now. I'm excited. I'd love to see what the Eagles can do.
Yeah, with regressions with Dallas, you don't know what you're going to get with the Commanders with everything going on there. Even though they got talent there, you just don't know where their heads are at as a whole. When you compare the Eagles, what the moves they made with their defense, it's what the Commanders on paper should have been 2 years ago when they first put it together, and what we should be building towards in Washington. Okay, just to be real with that. When you look at everything you just said, I've got to agree with that. I'm in on this as well. One thing that I will say, I looked it up while you were saying it. They went 9-8 last year, so that was their final record on that. So with the moves that they made last year, they're definitely going to build on that. They're gonna get at least 10 wins. I feel like this year they're going to go at least 10-7 or 11-6. That's what the Eagles are going to get. But I wanted to bring this up because I don't think I heard you say this part. The number one thing that I feel like made the difference was that trade they made with New Orleans, because the Eagles got the 18th overall pick for this year. They got the third round pick for this year, which was the 101th overall. The other one was the 18th. Then they also got the 7th round pick of this year, a first round pick in next year, and a second round pick for the following year in 2024. And they only gave up a 16th overall pick, a 19th overall pick this year, and a 6th round pick. That's a lot of moves that they made for their future here. So that's not just, besides what you said, the Nakobe Dean deal was big. The A.J. Brown trade was big. Getting Jordan Davis was big. But another one, also the signing of Hassan Reddick, was big for the Eagles as well. So when you're talking about the defense and making additions to that, I feel like those moves in themselves, between what you said and with me coming back with, and we both agreeing on it, it's hard for me to say that with the stuff you see behind me with the license plates and stuff from the past. But at the same time, I've got to be real with this on the journalistic side. I can be a fan all day long, but I try to pride myself on being one of the most realistic DC fans there ever was. And the truth hurts. You just got to – I'd rather do that than live in fantasy land and then get my feelings crushed or whatnot during the season when I'm watching the actual team play. Because when you're an actual fan of the DC team or any team, if I feel like in the NFC East, it's like a cardiac situation with the division, because it's always a roller coaster. You don't know what you're going to get. There hasn't been consistency in over 20 years within one of these teams at all. Any of the four teams, it's up and down. One team wins the division one year, the next year it's another team. But this year, with everything the Eagles made, I got to give them the one up. And I've talked about that with Ty before. And I'll say it again, I like the moves that they made. I feel like it's going to be big for them going forward for the next few years.
Yeah, and one move I forgot. I mean, they added James Bradbury too, so that's taking a strength away from the Giants, who he can come right in, plug and play on your defense, and now he strengthens the strength for you, because now you got Slay on one side, you got Bradbury on the other side. I mean, you got two lockdown tandem corners now potentially. So, I mean, Philly's made great moves this offseason, man. I just hope it translates to great football. I know Ty's excited. I'm sure Paul's got to be excited. But, I mean, Howie
also got to remember Bish on the network too. Yeah, Bish on the network's also
Bish has definitely got to be excited as well.
Yeah.
But, yeah, man, Roseman's a wheeler and a dealer. And I feel like he really came up on something this offseason.
Time will tell. Football season is approaching. USFL is over. You notice we haven't talked about that. I haven't really dived too much into USFL. I'll admit it. So I don't really know too much with that. I just once NFL's over, I'm excited to see what the XFL and with The Rock being a part of that, what's going to happen with that. But unless it's NFL, like, that's already takes up a good amount of time anyway. You kind of need a break from something to appreciate it as much as you do when we have the NFL offseason. So that's why we have the love, I think, for NFL that we do. Even though I like the USFL's idea, it's like when you have too much of something that kind of spoils it. So I'm just not going to be that one covering it. My apologies for the other sports coverage out there. We're just not going to do it, or at least on my end. But we do have one more thing to go over, and that is with Mr. Brown, we have a final round to discuss. Let's get ready for the action.
Final round.
And here with the final round, we talk about Rob Gronkowski. Gronk's second retirement won't last this season. He'll be back by week 10. James, how do you feel about this? Are you in or are you out on this?
I'm in.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely. I mean, we all know Grady and Gronk, they're running mates, they're buds, they hang out, all that. We all know that when Tom comes calling, Gronk's going to answer and Gronk's going to come through for his guy. They might be trying to figure out some money things, some money details. Maybe they're trying to get him some rest to say, hey, we don't need you for camp. We don't need you for the beginning of the season. When they need Rob Gronkowski, it's for the end of the year and the postseason. We all know that the Buccaneers can get there without Gronk, no problem. What they need from Gronk is playoff football. And when Brady calls, Gronk will answer the call. He'll show up. There'll be Gronk spikes. There'll be touchdowns, wins, possibly even another Lombardi for the guys. But Gronk's coming back. I can't see him sitting out.
For the sake of kayfabe and professional wrestling, I'm out. I've got to, man. I got to, for the sake of promos, I got to do one, and it's right here at the end. When it comes to Rob Gronkowski, he came back for 2 years for the Bucs. Nobody really even at first even gave him that chance to do that because he took a year off. It's tough to take a year off. Look at Jason Witten, come back and even be productive. Look at that. Even though Gronk's not nearly as old as what Jason Witten is, he still has had a lot of miles put on his body. He had a lot of damage done to him with the Patriots to where he had to take a year off, smoke some lettuce, and come back. It's pretty much what he was telling everybody. I mean, he was doing all that stuff. So whether it was CBD, the real stuff, whatever it is, he had to do that to heal up edibles, smoke. I don't know. I don't know how he did it, but we just know he was talking about it. Just like other professional athletes who have done it in the past. Whatever you got to do to heal and get yourself back out there. But I think with the year that he took off, and he came back. He got another ring for Tom. He helped him get there. It's now Tom's time to prove that he can not only do it without Belichick, but he can do it without Gronk too, in my opinion. You got a decent team that's built around you. You got rid of the head coach. Gronk he took time. He didn't rush into the decision. He took time to think about it. But he thought about it for a while, and then he just recently, not too long ago, said, hey, I'm done. I feel like this time he is done because he said he was beat up before. He wants to go into different things and try different things that he doesn't want to put too much time off because the iron might not be as hot if he decides to come back and retire for a third time. So whether it's acting career, professional wrestling, business ventures, whatever it may be, I feel like it's his time to step away, and I feel like he's going to retire for good this time. But like you said, I wouldn't be surprised, on the other hand, if he did come back for the reasons you said before about, the money, whether it be, Tom's persuasion, whatever the case may be. He could potentially come back as 50-50, but with everything I just said, and for the sake of kayfabe and for entertainment, I had to do it. I had to go without, had to give us some entertainment at the end of the show. And, with all that said, we've had 5 rounds here on the In or Out Sports Debate. We've got one more comment that's worthy enough for one more slide. Darrell says he's done. He's done. That's how he feels. He feels like Gronk is done. So you're still in on the fact that he's coming back before week 10.
I still think he's coming back, man. I feel like honestly, they're hashing some things out. It's kind of almost like a Brett Favre situation. Like, are you retiring? Are you coming back? You're trying. Like, we're not going to pressure you. We're going to let you take your time. If you need this, call us. If you need that, call us. Just let us know when you're ready. I mean, when Brady calls for Gronk, Gronk's going to answer because Tampa Bay's shown that, hey, if Brady needs something done, they go out, they get it for him. Well, I think I heard a story just over the weekend where Leonard Fournette was on a call. You know, he was a free agent this past offseason, and he was making his rounds, seeing what was out there, what was going to be offered. And Tom texts him or called him. He's like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, you know, I'm out taking interviews with this and that. And he's like, hold on, let me do some work. I'll get back with you later. And about what I think Fournette said about 15, 30 minutes went by, and he's got his new offer from the Bucs on the table that he accepted. So when Brady needs things to happen, the Glazers, Matt Light, I think this is GM's name. Well, I know his last name's Light. They found a way to get it done for him. And if he says, hey, I need Gronk, they're going to find a way for Gronk to be there.
I mean, it's the same thing like when it was Antonio Brown. So it's the same thing. So when he wanted AB, he got him. If he really wants Gronk, he'll get him. But at the same time, Gronk's the one who's got to make the decision. If he wants to put his body through that, if it's healed up enough and he wants to give it a go again, all power to you. But at some point, the injuries stack up, the beatings stack up. And I feel like maybe at this point in his career, what else does he have left to prove? He's potentially going to go down as one of the best tight ends to play. He might not have the full stats to like, Shannon Sharp did, but he's going to definitely be arguably in the top 5 of tight ends. He's arguably going to get in the NFL Hall of Fame one day. So he's already accomplished enough to where he doesn't have to go back out there. But if Tom really wants him and their friendship is tight as it is, I that's why I can't disagree. If I won't be surprised, I'll say, if he comes back, but I'm going to disagree with, I feel like he is done. I'm going to have to side with Darrell with that one. I feel like he's going to stay out on this one. So we've definitely covered the comments. We've gone through the topics. We only have one more section to go through, and that's the final word. And here with the final word, anything we cover throughout the show, anything that's just on your mind with sports in general, James, what do you want to get off your chest here to end episode 19 of the In or Out Sports Debate?
To give our NBA fans a little taste, I would say with all the latest drama surrounding Kevin Durant, him wanting out of Brooklyn, him naming his destinations of Phoenix and Miami as teams he'd like to go to, there was another team that emerged where, if an opportunity was there, the team would say that they'd be willing to make a deal, and that would be for Kevin Durant to actually return to the Golden State Warriors in a possible trade package. And in my opinion, if that is to be the case, if that does happen, if he chooses to tuck tail and run back to Golden State after leaving the first time because he wanted to establish himself as being his own man in Brooklyn, I would have lost all respect for Kevin Durant as a basketball player at that point. For you to say you want to be your own man, you want to do things your way, you want to build your own empire, your own franchise in a place that hasn't been done, and you give, 2 good seasons because the first year he was hurt, you give it 2 good seasons, and then it's like, hey, I want out. I can't get behind that. I can't get behind it, and especially if you're just going to turn tail and run back to Golden State. Because if that was the case, you should have never left in the first place. You should have never left. Just take the criticism because you'll have the wins and the rings to go behind it. That way, when your career is done, you can look at your trophy case, sit back and smile. But for you to take this course of action and go back, I can't support it. I'm out on that completely if he goes back to Golden State. I can't support the man anymore if that's the case. I just can't.
I mean, especially when you hear the stuff that he's saying about he wanted to get an easy championship. That's why he went with the Warriors anyway. Like, what kind of all-time great goes somewhere because he wants an easy championship? Or at least even says it out loud. LeBron didn't even do that when he said that when he went to Miami. He wanted to learn how to be a champion. He needed help, and he went there to be with D Wade and he formed the big three with Chris Bosh. And, he was still the man towards those 2 championships that they got, and struggled with the first year he was there and the last year he was there, and only won those second and third years he was there and getting those 2 with the back-to-backs. But they had to go through their struggles and learn. Kevin Durant just showed up and got 2 championships and then dipped, is literally what happened. He got hurt at the end, but then he still had already made up his mind he was going to leave and try to go do what everybody was saying that he should have done all along, is go and start his own team somewhere else and try to build his own team, which we already saw that he couldn't do that because he couldn't get along with, I guess, the management or whatever in that system. So I wholeheartedly agree with you on that part. But I am going to go in a different realm with my final. I'm going to go with the whole WNBA situation with Brittany Griner. I'm going to bring that back up from what we had talked about in several episodes back. This whole situation between her and the Russian government and the U.S. and back and forth, and writing letters to the White House and all this stuff to get out and turning this into a political ordeal is ridiculous when we look at sports as a whole. Okay. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Look at the laws when you go places. Know where you're going. It's kind of like when you're in the United States. State to state, you have different laws, okay? It's not the same law in Virginia as it is in Carolina or it is in Pennsylvania. Commonwealth states like Virginia and Pennsylvania are similar, but each state has their own defining laws. And when you go to other countries, it's no different. And if you were educated enough and paid attention enough when you were growing up in the United States, you would know that when you're going and traveling and going abroad to play for other teams to make your money, which I get that because WNBA doesn't make as much money through sponsorships and through other things like the NBA does, and that's how they get paid. They get underpaid compared to NBA players. However, when you have to go play abroad and you're gone for a few weeks or for a month or whatever the case is, like Stephen A says, lay off the weed, during that time frame, come up with an alternate or something that, Russia would have. Drink some fucking vodka if you have to for the pain. I don't care, but do what you got to do to stay focused and play the damn game because that's what you're getting there to be paid to do, not smoke lettuce and get in trouble. And not use it as a political game to get back in the NBA, get back into the U.S. I was actually with it at first, but this is starting to piss me off now, to be honest, because if you can't do the crime, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And even though it's a different country, and I may be a little bit harsh with some of what I'm saying, I wholeheartedly feel that way. Like you should be aware and to educate yourself on what the laws are and what areas and what you're getting yourself into before you even sign a contract. That's in life in general, and also in the sport of whatever you're doing for a career. Like you should know what you're getting yourself into. I'm not buying all that. That's why I'm out in this whole like trying to trade a Russian arms smuggler to bring her home deal like that. Between all these crazy trades we're hearing in sports, that's a crazy trade in itself. Trading a Russian arms smuggler for a WNBA basketball player. Now, come on, man. Like we're going to be giving someone back that could hurt us just for someone back to entertain us. Like I know we need to get her home, but we need to not trade a Russian arms smuggler to do that. We need to figure out a better way to do that. A way that still teaches her a lesson to where she needs to be more aware of what she's getting herself into and probably maybe some treatment because she's probably been through some trouble in Russia and has not been treated fairly. She needs to get some rehab somewhere that way too. But also, there are other alternatives than smoking a vape pen, and that's what she got caught with. Was what that was. And we could debate that in another whole non-sports topic, the difference between a vape pen and what grows out the ground. Okay, because one's concentrated and the other one's that, and I'm educated enough in all forms of life and self-educated where I could have that conversation too. So, but that's not sports, and we're not going to talk about that today. But right here, Darrell gives us one more comment at the final word saying, great show, fellas. And thanks for sticking up with us, Dio, throughout this episode 19. Thanks for, helping coordinate this too. I hit you up, but he said he had talked to you as well. That it kind of, we tag teamed it, with wrestling.
Teamwork.
Yeah, we made it work, and it was definitely fun. And with that, we do have to acknowledge that James has been vaulted. James is now locked in the vault for episode 19 of the In or Out Sports Debate. And joining this list of past participants, 1 through 11, Rob Johnson, 12 and 15, Tyrone Montgomery Jr., one half of the Undisputed Champions with episode 13, Corey Mann. In episode 14, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. Episode 16, the Snowman, Brian Snow. Episode 17, Mr. Rollback, Darrell Owens. Episode 18, Brian H. Waters. And as I just previously said, the guy who just saved the day, Mr. James Brown, with episode 19 coming in for the In or Out Sports Debate. I definitely want to thank you again. Thank our fans for watching this live, syndicated, listening to this when it's syndicated on Spotify, Amazon Prime, and as well as Apple Podcasts here when I get a chance to upload them. But those who are here live and who are going to see this on YouTube and stuff in the near future, thank you for your support. Thank you for sticking with us for almost 20 episodes that we'll be celebrating next Monday. And as you saw at the beginning of this intro of this show, we are celebrating 2 years of the In or Out Sports Debate. We had a little bit of a gap due to the pandemic and just some wild turns it took everybody. We had to take a break for a while, but the fact that we have come back strong this year, episodes 6 through 19, in just a short 2.5 months we've done, it has been a great run. And thank you to everybody in that Vault of Fame in the past, present with James right here on episode 19, and the future that's planned up through the rest of this month. I couldn't do it alone. It takes two to tango in the In or Out Sports Debate. So thank you all for being here. Episode 19 has now come to a close. For James Brown, I am Drew Willingham. Let's go to one last badass outro.